Hello, everybody. This is the day God has given us. Thank you for coming on one-on-one with TJK. Today, I am so excited to have my friend, a mother, a wife, a grandmother, and amazing change maker in the names of Patty Hall. Patty, my friend, is the founder and emeritus on the board on Water for Life. And by the way, Patty is so creative. Water for Life is not spelled with Water for Life. You will see it when we post it in the comments down on this episode. It is H2O. And the first time I met Patty, she was wearing a necklace, gold necklace with that symbol on her neck, which she's still wearing today, signifying that without water, we have no life. And that reminded me when I was a young man growing up in Nyakajezi, we used to do debates, Patty, and these debates will say, water is better than fire, debate. And one side will sit on one side and debate how water is more important than fire, and another group will debate on how important fire is better than water. But as I grew up and started the organization, I ran Nyaka AIDS Orphans Project in Uganda, Nyaka Global as it is known. I worked with you closely and worked with so many other organizations, including Rotary International, of which we are both members. We will get into that conversation. And we were able to bring water into Nyaka schools. I was reading on your LinkedIn and was astounded by the numbers. You started this program in a school that you had started, with the school you were teaching in, and looked at the issue that is facing the world and decided I must do something about it. But you didn't only say I would do something about it. You involved your students in learning something that does not affect them personally, but affects their brothers and sisters around the world. Since then, Patty Hall and our organization, Water for Life, they have raised to date $3.5 million that has been spent on water around the world. 800,000 youth, and I didn't stammer, 800, close to 1 million young people have participated in this program that the world called WASH. We have water, we have sanitation, we have washing, we have clean toilets, we have so much. But you are the guest party. I'm going to let you introduce yourself to our listeners, to our followers. We have so many young people who watch Jackson, who watch people who do this work and go, there's a way God created these men and women and dropped them in the world to make a difference. That's how they are able to do it. And this channel, TJK, and our listeners, we say we are ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and anybody can do it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Patty Hall.
Thank you. It's so nice to be with you today. You know how much I care about you and your schools and all the things that we've done together. And I totally agree that any ordinary person can do this. It does take a lot of work. It takes passion, and it takes a little bit of luck along the way as well. And I always consider myself an accidental nonprofit person and entrepreneur, because I really just stumbled into this. I had a friend, I traveled to Kenya for many years before I got involved in water, just because I loved the country. I went there on one trip and continued to go back. And I would bring medical supplies and other things, books, to schools and to people as I passed by. But I really didn't realize how the lack of water was impacting people until my friend, who had been my driver for like 15 years, wrote me an email and said, our kids are dying. We don't have any water. And I'd been in their village, and I saw those iconic pictures that all the tourists take of women walking with water on their heads. They make a beautiful photograph to bring home. But I never really thought about how arduous that task was and where they were getting the water. So he asked me if I knew of anybody that could help his community have access to year-round water by building a sand dam. Now, we funded one sand dam, and since then we've always worked at school. So that's the only project we did that was a sand dam. Knew nothing about it. And I had a young gal in my class whose father worked with Engineers Without Borders. So I asked this community to send me their program, because I'd never even heard of a sand dam. And they looked it over and said, that's a very viable solution for a community to get starting to make sure that water flows in that river year round. So the kids were tasked to raise $7,000. I had never raised a dime with my students, but I thought, let's give it a shot. And my husband and I decided that if the kids could raise half, we would match it if we needed to.
Yes.
Well, those kids raised $13,000 that year.
Whoa.
They just blew it out of the water. And they all did so many things, and it involved our entire school and every teacher in our school. It was an absolutely marvelous year where kids learned not only the need for water around the world, but also how important it was in our own community to conserve and protect water resources for the future. So I would have probably been happy to be one and done doing this one project that the kids really rallied around. But as serendipitous things happen, I met a man who was working in Washington, D.C., running a group called Water Advocates. And he said, I never realized kids could do such amazing things. Can you get me 10 schools next year?
Yes.
And I kind of stumbled and said, well, I guess I could try. And with his mentorship and meeting another person that was working for a foundation, they said, the first thing you have to do is you have to become a nonprofit, because nobody's going to give you money, just trust you to do something good with it without having some kind of a background. So getting that put together, getting some small funding, worked out of my home for 3 years, taught every day, went home at night, contacted schools, contacted teachers, reached out to people to get schools on board, and we were off and running.
And which year was this, Patty?
The first project was 2007-08 school year, which was the year we became a nonprofit. We had done the one project in 2006. And then the following year became a nonprofit and really started working as an organization.
So for our listeners who are right here in Northern America, in Europe, in all over the world, who travel, because now COVID has calmed down, people can still travel and go do a safari. You were traveling on a tour in Kenya, and you landed on this school. So I'm going to pause there and punch in a commercial. When you are traveling in these areas, as you Land Rovers and Range Rovers and big cars for tours, and you see a school, remember Patty Hall. Stop, greet the children. You might end up finding your passion that you will follow just like she did. I've asked so many people who come on this channel, Patty, because we have so many young people who listen to us, and you work with young people who I'm sure they will get to see this and go, Patty was a teacher, maybe now her husband matched the money, maybe I need a husband before I do something, maybe I need to be a teacher before I do something, but we are finding out that passion follows you. Ordinary people can do these things. You met the water advocates who kind of mentored you into leading to a nonprofit organization. Give an advice to young people who are listening, 18 to 21, they are finishing university. These are my son's age, Nicholas, who you know and you've met. If they want to make a difference in the world, what advice would you give the younger Patty Hall at 18 to 21?
Well, I think that everybody has a passion.
Yes.
You just have to figure out what that passion is. And truly, water wasn't my passion at the time. The passion came because somebody asked me for help, and I thought, how can I help do this? And I could have maybe gone to my church and asked people to raise funds, but I really thought about the fact that I'd been doing service learning projects in schools for a long time, and I saw that youth really have power. And we can't wait for them to be adults. We can harness that power now to help them know that they can change the world. And I think that once somebody finds their passion, they really have to believe that they can change the world. One thing that I probably, if looking back, might have done was to look for other organizations that were already doing water projects and
Yes.
maybe proposed that I could be their educational partner and work within that group. And I think there are lots of ways to explore and make a difference without being the one that creates the organization. You
Yes.
can be part of the organization and really make a difference in the world by the actions that you take. So you don't have to create NIACA if not NIACA is already there and that's your passion. You don't have to create water.org if you want to work in water, because you can explore and find some things there. And then if you really want to do something on your own, you've learned enough so that you can do that. I felt like I was scrambling to learn what I needed to do. But I think what I want to make clear is that our program is really education based. We
Yes.
really want kids to learn about the water crisis. So we have a lot of curriculum. It's all free. And a school does not have to do a project. They don't have to raise funds to access our materials. We hope they will. And we hope once they learn about the problem, they'll see the need and they'll say, what can I do? And some schools raise $500. Some schools raise $20,000. Some schools raise $50. But it's about getting them to take some kind of an action that's going to make a difference in the world.
That is right. And this curriculum you have developed working with so many different people, most of them volunteers, they are giving their time and resources, giving back to the nonprofit. Everyone who is listening to us understand that you don't have to create a nonprofit to make a difference. The 800,000 people, children, young people who have participated in Water for Life do not have their nonprofit organizations. If there is already infrastructure to use, you can build on that infrastructure to move the needle forward. And by the way, as we talk about this advice we are getting from Patty Hall is both applicable whether you work with horses or you work with puppies or you work with students or grandmothers or Nyaka. I'll tell you, when I was growing up as a young boy in Nyakajezi village, where you have visited, and we'll talk about that here coming up, I never dreamt that there would be piped water in my lifetime. We went and carried water, brought it home, and we carried water in clay pots. A clay pot is already heavy, Patty. And we had to walk, whether it has rained or it is shining or it is darkness, and you are halfway home, you slide a little bit, fall, break the pot, lose the water. Now you're going home to get a spanking because you broke the pot and you lost the water. Now you have to find a way to bring water home. It was not only, it was bad for me as a young man doing that, but it was worse for the girls who have to walk, and people. Nyaka has a program that fights against gender-based violence and rape. More girls are raped going to fetch water than any other activity and fetch firewood. Because it is a patriarchal society, this issue continued going on and on. So WASH in schools for hygiene and sanitation is amazing. For me, when I deal with water within Nyaka, it was also to protect our children from predators who wait for them as they are going to fetch water. The moment we solved the water problem, we saved women whose husbands were beating them, they took so long to make food, saved girls who were being raped, going to get water, and then all the WASH program. And we are seeing here, you didn't do it alone, you did it with as many advocates who are still, by the way, today as we speak in 2022, you can go on the website, we will share, and you can get the curriculum, and your school can participate in raising money, $50, $100, 20,000. We'll take any amount, and that water will go around the world. I've also said in many speeches, while I'm talking about water, that water here in the United States that we have in our toilets is 100% clean, drinkable water. Each time we pee and flush, we are flushing 7 gallons of water that is pure, clean, drinkable. Now, I have never encouraged anyone not to flush. Please flush the toilet. But be aware While that water is going down the drain in the sewer, 1 billion people around the world don't have a single glass of clean water to drink. So I applaud you, my sister, my mother, a grandmother. I have been to your home. We've talked about how we do this, and we have advocated. How do you find people to volunteer within Water for Life as an organization and as an individual?
We don't have a lot of volunteers outside of schools and teachers. We have a volunteer base within our community. And when I go to conferences, I can always find volunteers to help. But our greatest volunteers are teachers. And they are so giving. And I have to tell you that the first year I did this project, the principal of my school said to me, I don't know if you'll be very successful because I don't think people will want to give money if it's not for band uniforms or something within our school. Well, those kids got so engaged with helping somebody outside of our little community borders to become global citizens. And what they learned that year and what we learned as teachers and as a staff that year was incredible. It's a true service learning program where kids are learning about a need and then really taking action to fulfill that need. And I think that I would have never pushed it forward if I hadn't seen that it changed our school. And so it's pretty easy to get teachers on board when they realize that they're raising a generation of global citizens who understand that they can change the world. It might not be water, it might be something else, but they've learned these skills, these communication skills, these working together skills. How do you raise money? How do you do this? They've learned so many things that are applicable to their world that it's pretty easy to get people on board. But it's easy, but it's hard because most teachers have never been involved in raising a lot of funds. So when we go to a lot of conferences, we go to educational conferences where we meet lots of teachers, and you can tell the ones that get that glimmer in their eye when they think that they can do something globally. Yes. Because how do you do something globally? You just don't dial 1-800 Mozambique and find a project. So we've curated a lot of projects in many different countries. And so teachers that are teaching about Cambodia, maybe they want to do a Cambodia project. Maybe they have refugees and immigrants in their classroom that are from Uganda.
Yes.
And they want to do a Uganda project. So we look for partners that we really trust, like you, that we know that every penny that we send to you is going to go for building the projects. And the stories and the pictures that you send back to us, those kids light up and they will never forget that. I hear from kids from those years, those first years that I was still teaching and working in a classroom. I hear from those kids all the time about the impact that had on their lives. So it's just an important way to engage kids to take action. And I think the difference from raising money for a big group like breast cancer, which is certainly good, but kids don't see their impact. If they raise money for Nyaka School and they can read your book, or they get photos back of kids actually having access to water, or the interviews we took with your girls who were so smart and so intelligently talking about their needs in their community, kids see the impact and they really feel good about it. They know that it's helped them and they've helped somebody else.
So it is true what we have discussed. James Harrington, who was supposed to be here with us, we'll do a different segment with him. He and I have talked so many times how as organizational leaders, we end up spending more time educating people, educating the public about the causes and issues around the world more than raise money. Because we both believe, and you just stated it right there, when people understand the issue, understand like how I said, the first time I said that the water we flush in the toilet is 100% clean water, I was in Korea, in South Korea, speaking to the national school where wealthy children attend. And when I said it, you could see that nobody ever thought about it that way.
Right.
And when I also told them what Starbucks coffee cost at their school was $5.45, 1 cup. And many of them were getting that cup party and not finishing it because it's gotten cold and leave it there. I said, give me only $5 for 1 cup of coffee you spend. I will go feed 5 children in my village. I would not believe that. So people, when they are aware, children who are aware, and I like how you start on these children when they are still younger. At your house, when I visited and we did interviews for PBS News Hour, I met the teacher who took lead. I met the students who came in and put aside their time, and their parents drove them to come and we do this interview together. And these are inspirations that keeps me going. But you also touched on something many funders do not really put emphasis on, that I want to go back and reemphasize. Visiting projects, the inspiration you draw when you go and speak to children at Nyaka. So for full transparency, Water for Life and Nyaka have worked together. We built water tanks on Nyaka Vocational Secondary School. Patty Hall went there to Uganda. We have so many former Nyaka students, staff members who will be listening to this episode. Tell them about your trip to Nyakaje, Uganda, Kanungu, when you visited, and the project you worked on with us for the girls' dormitories.
Yes, I was just so blessed to be able to visit your school and worked with Fred D. Sam Lazaro from PBS to try to figure out how we could get to the school at the same time. We were coming from Kampala, he was coming from Rwanda, and we really ended up at the school within a half an hour of each other. So divine intervention had to happen. And I had 6 other people with me who were donors of ours who wanted to tour. We were touring schools in Uganda. And we were heading off to a gorilla trek, which was going to be our last thing. So we were right by your school. And we were so impressed with the kids that were at the school. The facilities that you put together in a very remote area was amazing. You know, computer labs, kids doing tech things that were just, incredible. And they were all so engaged, and we saw the difference that having access to water and access to toilets made for kids living on site at the school. So I think every one of those people along had their eyes opened. They knew we were doing this work, but when you really see the impact it has on the kids that are benefiting from it and the whole educational process, it just makes all the difference in the world.
Thank you. And this, since you mentioned Fred, amazing. Thank you, Fred, for all your work. We all met, Fred, yourself, the Tory Ditos who introduced us, because they worked with both of us. We all met one time in Easter Palm, Mexico at Opportunity Collaboration. We missed you at Opportunity Collaboration this the last one. I know you are not feeling well health-wise. How are you feeling now?
I feel great. I just needed a hip replacement and I'm as good as new. I'm ready to climb Kilimanjaro. There you go.
As good as new, ready to climb Kilimanjaro, ladies and gentlemen. Part of this work cannot be done in isolation, ladies and gentlemen. Young people, there is your advice. Everybody we have interviewed and hosted here has talked about the power of networking. If Patty and I had not attended Opportunity Collaboration in Eastern Palm, Mexico, we would not be having this interview right now. Fred would not have traveled to Nyaka Primary School. We would not have changed as many lives as we have changed. So as you develop your skill, the skill of networking and keeping relationships, I've gone to Patty's house, I've had tea and a meal in her house facing the lake. If you are ever in Minnesota and you want a place to go or can't find where to go, Patty can help you navigate that area. Tell us about your background, Patty. Where were you born and raised? And what role did your parents play in shaping this amazing teacher who became a global change maker and changed lives of so many people around the world using water for life to jumpstart?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, which is where I live today. And it's where my parents grew up. I feel like I'm kind of in the Ugandan where people stay in their own community. But I went to school at the University of Minnesota, and then my husband went to the Air Force Academy. So we traveled for 8 years in the Air Force. We lived in California, we lived in Arizona, we lived in Alabama. We had some other opportunities. And he got out of the Air Force after 8 years and became a Delta pilot. that allowed me to start traveling. And I had this traveling bug and started traveling all over the world because we could fly cheaply to all these places and had a wonderful time. So I think it expanded my horizons to the international world. Now, my parents were, I think, amazing parents. They were very philanthropic. They didn't have a lot, but my dad was an attorney who did a lot of pro bono work for people because that's just the kind of guy he was. And they were very engaged in the community and the schools and everything to support us as kids to make sure we were prepared to go to college, get an education, and do what we wanted to do. So I feel very lucky to have had the parents that I had and the opportunities that I had for education. Always wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to be a teacher from first grade. I helped the teacher in the classroom. I was always looking for opportunities to correct papers, to work with other kids, to do whatever I could. And I never regretted for 1 minute that I spent most of my career in education. I absolutely loved it. And I think that my second passion became water, but still working with schools. To me, the educational piece and getting kids to understand that we're all in this together. We have to work to make this world a better place, and we have to take action. I have a teacher that was so good at that. He came to one of our events and he spoke and he said, yeah, every year I'd tell the kids about social studies and we'd be studying someplace that didn't have water, and I'd go through the list of things they didn't have available to them. And I'd kind of turn around and go like, okay, I made them all sad now. And he said the one year that a girl raised her hand and said, but Mr. H, what are we going to do about it? Was his moment that he said, there has to be action. If kids don't learn to take action, they'll never take that step that they need to take to make a difference in the world. And so for me, providing a service learning program that is all about action, if I can get that in a school and get a teacher to really embrace it, I feel like I've won the lottery, because I know that they're going to change the minds of hundreds of kids by introducing them to this project.
Very, very, very good. You talk about being a teacher and you wanted to be a teacher from the young age. Your parents encouraged you. You have worked in so many areas which has this patriarchal society where girls are not encouraged to go to school. Girls' education is one emphasis we put on. If we have time, we can go back to that. But for now, I want to drill down on teachers. I appreciate teachers, Barney. You read my book, A School for My Village. In acknowledgements, I have my third grade teacher, Freda Viabrochidia, who later became the first headmistress at Nyaka Primary School, the original school, and who's still alive. She's like a second mother to me. When my mother and my dad were separated and I was nearly dropping out of school, this Freda pulled me aside and said, Jackson, don't worry about what's going on between your parents. Please stay in school. The house that your dad kicked out your mom from, you can get education and one day come build her a home. Patty, when you visited next to Nyaka Primary School, you saw a home. My mother was still alive. I grew up. Her prophecy as a Christian man, I can say this, the prophecy of a teacher got me to be where I was. All over, there were so many. But in the United States, for teachers and people who are listening to us around the world, or mostly in Uganda, teachers in the United States are educated, overeducated, and underpaid, and unappreciated so much because people get into their business too much. A teacher in Uganda in a classroom walks into a classroom and no student will say a word. It's like the word for teacher in Swahili is called mwalimu. Mwalimu, there is a God here, and next is a mwalimu. So you are like a small God. And the reason teachers are respected so much, ladies and gentlemen, because the knowledge you are going to get in a classroom all comes from this teacher's head. They don't have books, they don't have libraries, there are no computers and phones to go research, Google stuff. Everything the teacher says in their mouth is what's going to break you or build you. And those of us who listen to teachers and paid attention, you see, we become successful. So I wanted to make that plug for teachers. Thank you, teachers and parents. I'm glad your parents encouraged you to become a teacher. Your husband, thank you for your service, serving in the Air Force, traveling all over, but you came back to Minnesota. I've been there. And then you became a mother. Tell us about your children, your grandchildren. I want the kids who are listening, the girls who sometimes think they can't make their own choice or they can't balance career and work, to listen from you. You are our first guest who can speak from mother, wife, grandmother, auntie, great auntie, all in one sentence. I mean, not
one
one
sentence.
sentence,
Whoa.
all in one person.
Well, one thing I do want to say, though, is that I know many teachers and have the privilege of working with a lot of teachers, and most of them still love what they do, and they teach because they love what they do. I have a son-in-law and my daughter who teach, and even though there's all this noise around things that are bad in school, they have wonderful relationships with their students, and I know they're making a difference in their lives. So I think teaching is one of those professions. Granted, they could be paid more.
Yes.
I loved my life as a teacher, and it allowed me some, summer times to get out and do some other things and things like that too. So it was a great family profession to have. But yes, I am a mother. I have 3 kids. My son, Steve, is our director of schools for H2O for Life. He was a golf course superintendent, and he decided he really liked summers way too much to be spending every day on the golf course picking up after other people. So I had the opportunity to hire somebody who would organize our organization, because I am a scrap of paper person. I had school names written everywhere, and he came and organized things, loved the work, and he has been our director of schools for years. So he vets our partners.
Yes.
He works with our partners, and I have to say that we're picky about who we work with. We want partners that value the funds that we can give them.
Yes.
Because we want the stories. We want the kids on our end of the fundraising to understand that they are really making a difference. And we can't do that unless our partners are really good and provide us with the stories that we need. So my daughter is a teacher. She works in the White Bear School District. She's a special ed coordinator. So she works with kids with disabilities and makes sure that their programming is running well. And my son Dave lives out in California, in San Diego, and he is a director of marketing for La Jolla Institute of Research. So all 3 of them are settled. I've got 6 grandkids. All of my grandkids have been to Kenya, other than 2 of them. My 2 youngest are going to Kenya in July. So they'll have their chance to visit some of the schools and see the work that we've been doing. And my granddaughter, Talia, who is now in 10th grade, when she was in Kenya as a 5th grader, we went to a nursery school, and she saw that the children had to walk outside the gate of the school by themselves. And these kids were 4 and 3 years old, and they had to walk a block down this dusty road to go to a church to use a bathroom. And as always in some communities, there were some men hanging around, that had been drinking a little alcohol and smoking some cigarettes, and they would be bothering the children. And they came up to my granddaughter and touched her hair, and she said, "Grandma, I can't believe those kids have to walk off this school area to go to the bathroom." And I said, "Well, Tally, what are you going to do about it?" Well, she raised money to build toilets for that school. Yeah, she got her friends together. She got 5 other girls together. They baked dog biscuits. They bagged them up, and they raised over $1,200 to start that project in that community later that summer. So kids can do it. You just have to give them the incentives. She saw the need, and when she was challenged with what are you going to do about it, she came up with a plan.
So for you parents who are listening right now, I know many of you are, we keep thinking we are doing something in the world. It has no age limit. That's what we learned from Talia right now.
Right.
And let's start challenging our children and grandchildren on what are you going to do about it. They see a commercial, they are looking at this, children are dying of hunger. Instead of trying to just fight or make them feel guilty, they are eating good food while others are starving. Just ask. That's a tweetable moment, buddy.
Yeah.
Just ask what are you going to do about it. Interestingly, your grandchild name, Talia, has the same name as our twin girl, Talia.
Yeah. I remember that. I remember meeting your twins and thinking that they had the same name.
Yes. And let me tell you what Talia did. I know you, Talia was 6 years old we went to the library, public library, to read books. I always get kids, all the children from Nicholas, their own card so they can have that pride of walking in a library and check out a book. While she had read a book about a blind person, and when she went to the library, she asked the librarian, she wanted to see books by blind people with Braille. And Okoma's public library didn't have a single Braille book. And when she told me, what are you going to do about it, Talia? She wrote notes and asked me and her mom to put it on Facebook that Talia would like to get Braille books. Please buy, if you can, send them to me so we can start a section of Braille book. Okoma's public library has Braille books now because Talia in Michigan from Uganda acted on it, answered the question, what are you going to do about it? You, Talia, made sure that girls don't have to walk across to go to the church to use the bathroom. And these are babies who are only challenged, what are you going to do about it? And they picked it up and did something about it. So you followed from teacher. And by the way, I want to also reemphasize, I didn't mean that all teachers teach because they love what they do. If it was for pay only, we wouldn't have enough teachers in schools. But every teacher I've met, my children's teachers, all of them, they have passion for what they do. If you and I were to be paid for what we do, there is no amount of money that can pay us for what we do. We love what we do, and so following that passion is so great. You have answered the advice to young people, have answered the passion, answered how we work with teachers all over the world. I always tell our guests, please make a plug. I call it shameless plug. Whether there is a book out there that you have written, an article, a water tank that we can buy, where people can go and make donations, where schools can sign up and get a curriculum. Every time I do that, I tell them I have all these 7 books, they are out there, people can buy them. We want people to get information after they listen to these. And also you can tell us about your Rotary journey. We've been a Rotarian for many years. On the weekend, we wanted to attempt, and he told me, no, Jackson, I'm going to be volunteering at my Rotary club. We both love Rotary. I talk about it a lot, but I would like our people to hear from you. Why Rotary, and how did you get to become a Rotarian?
Well, that is interesting because way before I became a Rotarian, because Rotary did not work for me in my community because they met at 7:30 in the morning and I was teaching and I had to be at my school. So that wasn't an option. But I didn't know anything about global grants, which was one of the international things that Rotary does, where you can raise a lot of funds to put on a global project that fits areas of focus of Rotary, and water happens to be one of them. So before I was a Rotarian, we were approached by Rotary to engage kids. They saw the interest of kids, and they knew that by engaging kids, not only were they going to get these kids exposed to changing the world, but they were also going to expose them to the fact that Rotary does good things, and maybe there's a path for them later in life to become Rotarians. Yes. So we've done, H2O for Life has done $1.2 million worth of global grants with Rotary through kids raising half of those funds. So that was a great connection with us. And once I retired, I joined my Rotary Club because they do so many wonderful things in our local community, but they also have a global part as well. Yes. So I was interested in doing both. I'm real actively involved in volunteering in the White Bear Lake community, but I also want to make sure that I'm always staying involved internationally. So besides supporting projects with water, we do many, many other things in our club. We support maternal and child health. We have lots of projects going on. We have youth projects going on. And it just really gives me a way to stay involved and to volunteer as I age. And I love it.
Wonderful. And Rotary for a long time, I know also, I thought actually you were going to say you wanted to join, but for a long time didn't admit women as members. Right. But now, turning point, everything has on time. Our next president is going to be a woman for Rotary International.
Right.
Rotary is very active in Uganda. Many of the people who are listening to us today, some of them are Rotarians, and we continue to do service above self. Anything else you would like to share before we close out?
Well, I would like to say to your audience watching that everybody out there knows a teacher or a child or somebody that knows a teacher or a child. And the way we get engaged with kids is by meeting with these teachers and convincing them that this service learning project and helping bring water to a school that's in need somewhere in the world is life-changing and is critical. And also the critical part is that we all need to know that we need to protect and conserve our water resources for the future. And it's becoming more apparent all the time. So that two-part thing of educating the kids and then taking the action, and action can be towards anything. Of course, my passion is always going to be water, sanitation, and hygiene, and I don't think I'm going to vary from that. But if you know any teachers or kids out there, have them look up h2oforlifeschools.org and tell a teacher to take a look at it. I think they'll like what they see, and maybe they can support a few more of Jackson's projects through us.
Wonderful. So the teachers who will be looking at it, and they are in South Sudan or Burkina Faso or Nicaragua or Portugal, what can those teachers do? International teachers around the world.
International teachers can do everything the teachers here can do. Now, we don't have our curriculum translated into many languages. We have some in Spanish, but a lot of schools teach in English anyway. So of course our materials are all available. And let's say that you are living in Nicaragua. It's just as important for those kids to know how to conserve and protect water as it is for them to have access to water. It's kind of, you need to do both. So I think that we have a way to reach out to schools worldwide. Our focus has been US because we're small. We don't have a lot of people. You kind of have to focus on where you can do the most impact. But we do get a lot of international schools that do join us because they hear about it and they have a different school population. They have kids from all over the world and they'll join a project like what we're doing.
Very good. So ladies and gentlemen, young people around the world, you heard it from the horse's mouth. You heard it from Buddy Hall, who's done this many, many years, who has asked the question, what are you going to do about it? Engaged teachers, took action with students all around the United States and built water systems, water tanks, wash programs to as many places as you can think about, including Nyaka village where I was born and raised.
Yeah, I'm really proud of youth that we've provided water and sanitation to over 1,200 schools. That's a lot of kids who have access to water now. And it's usually, as you know, not only access for the school, it does filter out into the community. So it really helps the whole community and it keeps girls in schools. And the longer you can keep girls in schools, the more community changes. So there's just such a ripple effect of what happens when water comes into a school.
And when we did our water systems party, the grandmothers program, Nyaka has 20,000 grandmothers raising 86,000 children.
Right.
I would one day love to say that each one of them have clean water. But the aspects of water in the houses are now extending to filters that we can get. Actually, a Uganda Water Project, our friend James Harrington is working on getting filters that you can use water in the house for drinking water. But ladies and gentlemen, we're talking beyond just drinking water to taking the right bath with water that has no bacteria to start growing on your body, to having a shower, cooking with the right water, washing with the right water, the entire program of water. Water is life indeed, and so many lives have been saved, Patty. I thank you, I appreciate you. I know Katie, one of your board members who we met through also opportunity collaboration, is going to be running New York Marathon in 2023 for Nyaka to continue raising that flag of water for life, but also continue making a difference in this world.
I'm going to have to come watch.
Please, yes. In
Wow.
fact, the 2022 runners, we have 23 runners on November 6th in New York.
Wonderful.
So for all New Yorkers, join us November 5, November 6, November 4th, 5, and 6. We'll be in New York. We'll have 23 runners. They come with their families. They come from all over the country, mobilizing, getting volunteers to run for a cause. So somebody else's life can be better, and together we make this world a better place. Please subscribe, please share and comment, and we'll continue to bring you guests like Patty. We'll continue to inspire more people, both around the world and those who are in the global south who think they can't make a difference. We want them to know that ordinary people can make extraordinary changes in this world, and each one of you can do it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jackson. It's always great to talk to you.